Hi friends, it's your pal Scott Garibay. Today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Ryan McBeth's Win Machine. So there are spoilers for Ryan McBeth's Win Machine in this. So Ryan McBeth's Win Machine is a highly conservative fiction novel, and what's really fascinating is Ryan McBeth is he's a military intelligence expert. Who knows a lot about tanks, who was formerly in the military. But recently in our world, there was this situation where basically there was a drone attack there was a drone attack that occurred in from Ukraine to Russia, right? And Ukraine just put in a couple of these semi-trailers, these trailers that you would attach to a normal semi, a Peterbilt or a Mack, and you would just haul these boxes in, and they're on wheels. And so basically Ukraine just used these semi-trailers and put a bunch of drones near billions of dollars of Russian bombers, right? And they took a few $100,000 worth of drones, maybe even less than $100,000 worth of drones, and utterly destroyed billions of dollars of military hardware. It was such an amazing strike. It was routinely being called on American media Russia's Pearl Harbor. I was like, what? Like, that's incredible, right? And but what's interesting is Ryan McBeth predicted this. He perfectly explained how it would happen and perfectly predicted exactly that type of hyper strike, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of drones destroying billions of dollars worth of property, and just perfectly predicted it, right? So what I think is interesting is he's modeling the real world with fiction, right? But we have the most adaptable, most important fiction engine that's ever been created, and that's what Gary Gygax did. Dungeons and Dragons fundamentally updates human narrative and how humans interact with narrative and identity, right? And so what we can do, so I think one of the things that's really interesting is we can use Dungeons and Dragons to perfectly predict what we think is coming, right? But with this with this distance, right? So that it's safe and we can say things out loud that you could never say. We can say things in the open that you could never say out loud directly, which I think is fascinating. It's a new value on Dungeons and Dragons stories, right? Something that can be done with Dungeons and Dragons stories, I think, far more effectively, far more accurately, and far more valuably with Dungeons and Dragons than you could ever do with a novel, which is really an antiquated, extremely impersonal junk format at this point. It's nothing compared to Gary Gygax's Dungeons and Dragons story, which are collaborative with the audience in real time, and both collaborators are interrupted by fate itself with the math rocks. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.